The trial for Derek Chauvin is currently underway in Minneapolis, and the residents of this city are waiting in fear, knowing that if the proper outcome the activists want is not obtained, there will be mass riots. And many fear no matter what happens, there's going to be mass riots because the activists wanted more serious charges for the officer involved in the death of George Floyd. But now we're hearing straight from the activists themselves, notably Chelsea Handler, who said, "Why should there even be trials?" We all watched the video, sparking a major backlash. There should be trials. We have a Fifth Amendment. Just because you see something on video doesn't provide you all of the context. And many are starting to recognize, including other left-wing organizations like The Nation, that the acquittal of Derek Chauvin is currently underway, in which the residents of Minneapolis are right to fear there will be mass riots. After Chauvin is acquitted, assuming he is, we will see the other cases fall apart because the other officers being charged, their cases are predicated upon whether or not Derek Chauvin did something wrong. And if he didn't, how will the other officers actually be charged? Well, now what we're seeing is an attempt by many leftists and even establishment media, at least in my opinion, in some aspects, to expose the jurors, which could potentially corrupt this trial. And unfortunately for the residents of Minneapolis, that would just result likely in a mistrial, not a conviction or an acquittal, which would delay the process, ignite more riots, cause massive damage for the people who live there, resolve nothing. A woman was reprimanded by the judge in this case because she was taking photos. And she posts to Twitter smirking and laughing and posting a critical race theory style talking point, suggesting she is very much on the side of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter activists in this case, regardless of what is true. Now, I'll tell you this for me. I'm not on anybody's side. I'm on the side of the truth. If these officers did something wrong, I want them held accountable. But going in and taking photos inside this building, and the judge took her phone and questioned her about what she was doing and why she was even there. That could corrupt the trial. Now we have a couple different news publications, including the New York Times, revealing as much as they can about the jurors, potentially exposing them. And I got to say, I think it is very likely. We know for a fact the jurors have expressed in this trial that if their information gets out, they fear retaliation against themselves and their families. And it's this fear that will pressure them into making what the activists would deem the proper decision in this case. I don't think there is going to be a peaceful resolution to whatever happens in this trial. Even if Derek Chauvin is convicted on all counts, including murder, then it's very likely they'll say, well, it's not enough, and they will riot anyway. I mean, we see this with sporting events. People riot when their team wins. They riot when their team loses. The people will find some reason to claim it's just not enough. And in the end, the left will do everything in their power just to get a tribal political victory, regardless of who is truly at fault in this matter. Now, we're getting new information out of this trial. The clerk at the store, who apparently received this counterfeit $20 bill, says that George Floyd looked like he was on drugs, which is the crux of the defense's argument, that George Floyd died from drugs, not from Chauvin's actions. We're going to break this down and we'll go through the latest information. But it really does seem that the left doesn't want a trial, and they will do everything they can, or at least as much as they can, to make sure the trial falls apart. But before we get started, make sure you go over to timcast.com and become a member to get access to exclusive segments from the Timcast IRL podcast. We have a bunch of really great conversations with our guests, with Cassandra Fairbanks, Jeremy Hambley. We have full podcast episodes with people like James O'Keefe you can only get if you're a member. We set this up because the purge is real. They're coming after many channels, and it's very likely in the near future that my channels get axed as well. And some people say that's not true, but it already happened to me on Facebook, which many of you probably know. So if you want to support this show, all of my shows, and the company as we expand, become a member at timcast.com. You will get these exclusive episodes. We've also got more content on the way. We're talking about doing shows and movies and a whole bunch of other stuff too. So please become a member. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Let's read what's going on. We have this story from Newsweek. Chelsea Handler sparks backlash for suggesting trials be skipped when there is no evidence. Now, I want to highlight this first because that's the gist of the story. A lot of people are mad about what she said, but it shows that many of these tribal leftists, these activists, don't actually care about the truth, figuring out what the truth is, trying to understand the context, trying to understand the charges. They just want a victory. They don't care how they get it. They don't care about due process. They just want to say they won. Own the cons. That's all it is, apparently. And now I'll show you what's going on with the courts. And we'll come back to the Chelsea Handler thing. Take a look at this from the Washington Post. 10:22 p.m. Judge reprimands witness's PR person for taking photos. The second day of former police officer Derek Chauvin's murder trial ended Tuesday night on a strange note, with Judge Peter A. Cahill calling on a woman who identified herself as a public relations person, working with witness Darnella Frazier and managing the media for her to the stand. Cahill reprimanded the woman for taking pictures with her cell phone during the trial and asked her to delete them, to which the woman apologized repeatedly, claiming she did not know she was not allowed to do so. The incident was a sign of the tight control around the high-profile murder case that has brought national and international media attention. So we've seen it. Chelsea Handler doesn't want a trial. How can you stop a trial? I don't know, maybe freak out the jurors, publish their private information, maybe their photographs, and then allow the internet to do the rest? Because apparently that's what's actually happening. Many people are angry because the New York Times and Yahoo have published private details. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not private. Public information that was collected during the trial. And this will allow people to use these lists and sort through all of the data from the city to find out who these people are. And I got to say, some of this information is awfully specific now. The jurors have expressed that they're worried about their information getting out. But let's go through this. Check this out. Business owners fear repeat of unrest and destruction during Derek Chauvin trial. We just have to deal with whatever comes. The people here know what is at stake. And what do you get instead of an honest media? Well, first, from my Fox 8, prospective jurors in Derek Chauvin trial exhibit fear, anxiety, and strong opinions. Now, this is a fair point. They say, one was anxious, worried about high emotions surrounding the case. One worried his family might be targeted. And one was delighted to receive her jury summons, even after learning she might wind up on the panel considering whether to convict a former police officer in George Floyd's death. All of this is connected. The people who fear the riots, it's exactly why the jurors are worried about their information getting out. One juror said specifically, I'm terrified about what will happen if people find out who I am. Because the activists know. Well, they don't have to go to the person's house and make demands of them. It's implied. And the implication is all that matters. If this person's information gets out, you will have all of the spineless corporate media. You will have spineless corporations, businesses saying, we can't associate with you. You'll have people saying at a job, maybe it's a wicker basket company. And they'll say, yes, you would like a job here doing PR or management. Look, we know you were just doing your jury duty, but we really don't want to risk being associated with you because the activists will riot. They will burn things down and the police will do nothing to stop it. So the jurors know this, which is why it is so insane to me that a woman tried taking photos during the trial that the New York Times and Yahoo have published as much information as possible at the jurors as they can. Take a look at this from the New York Times. Who are the jurors in the Derek Chauvin trial? The jurors bring to the table a range of views about race and policing, some forged by lifelong experience and some formed after the death of George Floyd. I'm not going to read you everything that's in this article because I recognize the issue of publicizing private details about some of these people. But for the sake of helping you understand, I will give you some of the information because first and foremost, it's been published by the New York Times. I'm not going to pretend like me ignoring this does anything to change the fact that the Gray Lady, the paper of record, has already maximized pushing out this information. And I want to be fair and reasonable. This is information they collected from the trial that people gave up. I still think it's important to try and restrict people on the internet tracking down who the jurors are, and you probably can based on the information they gave out. So that is the reality of the situation. Now, I'm not trying to say the New York Times is purposefully trying to get people to do anything untoward or dox these people, but I certainly think it's irresponsible to create essentially a dossier. And the New York Times didn't necessarily do that, but Yahoo did. And this is not just Yahoo, it's USA Today for Yahoo. Here are the jurors who will decide whether Derek Chauvin is guilty of murder in George Floyd's death. And they actually, I'm going to show you just one snippet. Chemist, white man in his 20s. That's all I'm going to point out. I'm not going to read through this, but I'll read through some of the other stuff from the New York Times. The reason is, with that information, you can easily deduce who these people are. And worse still, we know what happens when people are given limited information and then become obsessed and claim they know who the person really is. And then they harass innocent people. We don't need these stories. We don't need a direct, titled story from the New York Times and USA Today saying, who are the jurors? Here's all their information. I understand they did give this information out at the trial. So ultimately, it was the officers of the court, it was the attorneys and the individuals who gave this information up, and the New York Times and the press aggregated it. I will absolutely say the court should have been much more secure in giving out how much information they actually let out, and the jurors probably did not realize this. So I'm not going to put it on the jurors. I'm going to put it on the trial for publicizing all of this information. I mean, there was a lot. The trial is being live streamed. Perhaps it's a good thing, but I think many on the left just want the trial to stop. Here's what New York says. They say a white intensive care nurse who said if she saw someone on the street who needed help, she would feel obligated to step in. A black grandmother who said she had no personal experience with police or the criminal justice system. A white widow who rides a motorcycle in her spare time and said she believes that all lives matter. A black man who works in banking and said he was eager to serve on the jury of the most historic case of my lifetime. These are some of the jurors appointed to weigh the evidence in the case of Derek Chauvin, the white former police officer who was accused of murdering George Floyd. The jury is a demographic mix, 3 black men, 1 black woman, and 2 women who identified themselves as multiracial. There are 2 white men and 4 white women. They are urban and suburban, ranging in age from their 20s to their 60s. The 2 alternates are white women. The jurors bring to the table a range of views about Mr. Chauvin, Mr. Floyd, race, and policing, some forged by lifelong experience and some formed after the video of Mr. Floyd dying under Mr. Chauvin's knee. And that what they say is a major, which started a new civil rights movement. Okay, I will stress this again as we go to the next story. This is information they all gave out in the trial. And I'm not necessarily going to fault anyone for talking about this. I just think there is clear evidence to suggest the left is not here. You know, the woman taking photos, Chelsea Handler, there is a clear motive towards exposing the jurors. And we already saw something really nefarious in the past few weeks, or at least in my opinion, nefarious. The city of Minneapolis issued a massive record-breaking settlement to the family of George Floyd, upwards of $20 to $30 million. And many said that this had already corrupted the trial. 2 jurors had to be dismissed. Now, why would the city go and do this? It's almost like they want the trial to be prejudiced. Now, the prosecution in the Chauvin case said they could not control what the city did. But boy, when you see these statements, when you see these actions, when you see what the media is doing, and we know which direction they lean politically, it really does feel like efforts to just corrupt the trial. Corrupting the trial won't result in Chauvin getting off scot-free. It will result in riots. I mean, the nation is already saying it. Look at this. 20 days ago, okay, this is almost 3 weeks ago, the acquittal of Derek Chauvin has already begun. The jury selection process, which started this week, shows how the cop who killed George Floyd can and likely will win. Chauvin will likely win on the merits because it's true, according to the medical examiner's report, that George Floyd did have drugs in his system. And unfortunately for those on the left who haven't been paying attention, the truth is George Floyd appeared high when he handed over fake $20 bill. Did I say Chauvin before? George Floyd. They say that George Floyd had drugs in his system. George Floyd appeared high when he handed over fake $20 bill and had difficulty forming words, worker testifies, as court is shown never before seen footage moments before he died. This is from the trial. It's why trials are so important to get to the facts. Now, you want to argue manslaughter. Maybe Chauvin did not act properly with George Floyd. They knew each other, apparently, or at least worked in the same place. So it's a very strange case. But when you have a witness, the clerk at the store, saying it looked like the man was on drugs, he was trouble forming words, there was drugs found in his system. This was well before the police were called. And already the left is trying to make it seem like the system is at fault here. Maybe the system is at fault to a certain degree, but not like a cop decided to he just wanted to kill somebody. Here's what the Nation says. Derek Chauvin is the Minneapolis police officer who killed George Floyd. Now, that's maybe not true. The trial stands for this reason, to determine to a jury what really happened. Now, I suppose it's fair to say the medical examiner said that it was a combination of factors. So you could say that Chauvin is responsible to a certain degree. We're going to have to wait for the results of this trial. But they say, I don't have to say allegedly killed because I saw it. Floyd was alive. And then 8 minutes and 46 seconds later, he was not. And the only intervening event that happened was Chauvin's knee on his neck. Actually, that's not true. And the Nation could be subject to libel laws, depending on the outcome of this trial. If evidence is presented contrary to that fact, and they already did present it, the Nation could be held responsible for defaming Chauvin. Because it is true now, even with witness testimony, Floyd appeared to be on drugs. They say Chauvin's trial started this week, and soon a jury comprised mainly of white people, of this we can be almost certain, will tell us whether they think killing a black man should be a crime. In a reasonable world, this trial would be perfunctory. In a reasonable world, there wouldn't even be a trial. And there it is again. I am telling you, this is what they want. No due process, no Fifth Amendment. I'm sorry. You call me biased. You say that I'm right wing for standing up for our rights, for the civil rights of minority communities, for trans people, for the LGBTQ community, for mixed race people, and all these people. The Constitution applies to them as well. They have a right to free speech, a right to bear arms, a right to have no one living in their homes, a right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure, a right to a trial by jury. These rights stand for everyone. And I stand up for that Constitution because it applies to everyone. And through these words that were written, the U.S. has expanded civil rights. And the Nation, a left-wing publication, says there wouldn't even be a trial in a reasonable world. We put the Nazis on trial. Nuremberg. There are trials for everyone to display the crimes they did and prove beyond a reasonable doubt to everyone what they did. It's not just some vapid celebrity. It's the Nation, a prominent left-wing publication, saying there would not be a trial. So forgive me if you think it a little biased when I say a woman trying to take photos during a trial and the media publishing information about the jurors. Forgive me if I believe that's an attempt to expose the jurors and cause some chaos or corruption in this trial. It's my opinion. My opinion could very well be wrong. That's why it's an opinion. You look at the facts for yourself. That's all I can really say. They go on. They say there wouldn't even be a trial. Chauvin would have accepted some kind of plea deal. That's what most people do when they're caught on camera killing someone. Maybe, as the defense has already pointed out, in Minneapolis, the police are trained to do what they did. And if you have a problem with the system, and I do, the system must be changed. But the individual you can't claim murder when they're told to do it by a public institution. To me, this is insane. They say we don't live in a reasonable world. We live in a white one. Chauvin is white and he's a cop and his victim was black. In most situations, that's all you need to get away with murder. This is the big lie from the left. This belief that there are thousands or 1,000 plus innocent and unarmed black individuals killed by police. They genuinely believe this because the media keeps making these exaggerated claims, but it's not true. I've done numerous stories breaking down, well, yes, every single one of these unarmed black individuals who loses their life to a police officer is a tragedy. And we must find some kind of resolution to these matters. It is not in the thousands. It is not some recurring theme of great consequence. It doesn't actually happen all that much. I believe the number given by the Washington Post was 9 or 13 in 2019. I believe others said if you want to broaden your criteria, it could be as high as 27. Each and every one of these deaths is wrong. I absolutely believe that. And I absolutely believe there must be accountability. That doesn't mean it was murder. It could mean the system is broken. But when you focus on one guy and you ignore the greater problems, maybe you don't actually solve that problem. Now, don't get me wrong. These leftists absolutely want to change the system. That I understand. And they should, because I think we should change it. I saw a thread earlier. There was a bunch of videos. It was about cash bond. And it made me sick to my stomach. There's one video where a man, I think he crashed a car or something to that effect. It was, I believe it was a misdemeanor charge because his license had been suspended. And the judge said that bond has been lowered to $1,000. The man says, I don't have that. I don't have a mother or a father. I have no one else. And I need to go to my children's custody hearing. I'm trying to get my family back together. And the judge says, I've already lowered your bond to $1,000. There's nothing more I will do. Have a nice day, sir. Knowing this man has no capability to pay that bond, remanding him to custody, some people, when they're charged with misdemeanors and they're innocent, spend months in jail waiting their trial. They lose their jobs. They lose their homes. I have a problem with this. We are innocent until proven guilty. We have a right to a speedy trial. And I've seen the stories and I've heard them. Innocent people suffering. My friends, I have heard it over and over again from people who say, yeah, but I've seen these stories of an offender who commits a crime. They go to jail or they go to court and the court says, cashless bond, you're free to go. And they go and commit a crime right away. It's true. It is. But you know what? Freedom trumps security. It is better that 10 guilty persons escape than one innocent person suffer. And Benjamin Franklin said that it is 100 guilty persons should escape so that one innocent person shall not suffer is a statement that has long been accepted. I'm paraphrasing here, but it's long been accepted as morally right. It's Blackstone's formulation. I understand there are problems with our system, and I absolutely believe they need to be reformed. The system needs to be reformed. With the left on that issue, I absolutely agree. But claiming that because you've seen one video, it justifies not having a trial is the opposite of justice. That's exactly what they're doing here. To me, it's sickening. They're going to say, Chauvin's attorneys will likely argue that something else killed Floyd during the nearly 9 minutes. Chauvin was suffocating him. Well, he wasn't suffocated. I mean, my understanding is that, I could be wrong about that actually. I think the medical examination said it was a combination of a heart condition, drugs, and the restraint. But I don't believe it was specifically suffocation. Now, the family's medical examiner, I believe, said it was asphyxiation. Look, George Floyd had done some bad things in his life. That's what they report. But he also had a video, I remember reporting on this, where he was telling young people to stay away from this stuff, to do better, and to be better, and it broke my heart to see this guy. I am very much on the libertarian side of the political spectrum, and I leaned left. Ideologically, I'm pretty far left on the libertarian spectrum. But that means I believe George Floyd, if he wants to ingest a substance, it's entirely his business, so long as he's not like driving or something like that. I believe, look, New York just announced they were decriminalizing a certain amount of pot. Absolutely right in my book. Do it. People have a right to chill and mind their own business. I would love to live in a world where transgendered individuals are armed to the teeth and buying their pot with Bitcoin. I am very much on the libertarian side of things. If George Floyd wanted to, put something in his body, it's his choice. Now, the issue at hand is the counterfeit $20 bill. The clerk in this case apparently said on trial that he was going to get in trouble if he tried, turning in counterfeit money because they'd say, hey, you were supposed to mark these bills. You're supposed to check them. And so he went to George Floyd. Apparently, he wanted to tell the guy, just come back and pay. Give me a different bill. We'll swap it or something. But the store was adamant. Call the cops. That happened. Now, whether or not George Floyd did anything wrong, we won't know because that's not what this trial is about. But apparently, On the video, the defense has shown, you can see something white on the tongue of George Floyd. And you can see from the toxicology report, he had drugs in his system. It's not easy. None of this is easy. But the reason why we have trials is get to the truth at hand, to try and figure out and prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, I guess for the left, they want an ideological victory. They don't want a trial. They just want their tribe to win. That's what they do, whether it violates the rules of the court or otherwise. They don't care about what really happened. Should Chauvin go to prison? In my opinion, based on everything I've seen, no. No, I don't. However, if you want to argue manslaughter, that may be the case. It is a fact that the training materials for the Minneapolis PD show the exact thing that Chauvin did. Now, was he negligent in sitting on George Floyd for 8 minutes and 46 seconds? That may be the case. I leave it to the jury. They're going to hear more than I will. I suppose we can watch the live stream and see a lot of this evidence, but they'll get to examine it and argue it, debate it. Maybe Chauvin is responsible because he knew there were risks and he did nothing. In fact, one of the witnesses apparently said they were yelling to him that he was engaging in a dangerous blood choke and that he needed to stop. Maybe the Minneapolis Police Department is improperly training their officers. I strongly believe that may be the case, in which case the responsible outcome is a historic settlement, which they did, not during a trial, mind you. They shouldn't have done that. And a lawsuit forcing these rules to change. That's not what's happening, though. They want the police officers involved to go to prison. Okay, well, you know what? If they did something wrong and the evidence proves it, then good. They should go to prison. I just have not seen it so far from the evidence. We'll see how these things play out. But I'd like to show you something. You see how I mentioned early on, the crux of this is the woman who took a photo during the trial. Let me show you this person's Twitter account. This individual says that look when you've been scapegoated by a Hennepin County sheriff, microaggressions are real, connect the dots. Someone then says, I've only been to a court building for traffic related situations. Even I know picture taking isn't allowed. I knew that before I started driving. You are taking advantage of the judge's grace. I would have barred you from the premises for the duration of the trial. And she said, I'm not from here, white boy. It very much sounds, in my opinion, like this individual knows that she could be exposing the jurors whose identities are being protected, causing problems. Now, I don't know what her intention was. I just know that the judge reprimanded her for this, and I have my personal opinions about whether or not she was doing something nefarious. And in my personal opinion, as the point of this video, I believe she was, and the judge should have barred her. This judge is naive, unfortunately. He seems like a good guy, to be completely honest. He really does. I think he's doing a pretty good job, actually, and I respect him, but he does seem naive in not understanding how serious the culture war is and what may happen. This individual may not have been able to take photos, but someone in the court need only describe the appearance of the jurors. Nay, with the information published by Yahoo and the New York Times, essentially creating this dossier, I know it's publicly available information. I want to stress that point. I'm not saying these journalists dug up anyone's private details. But with the collection, the aggregation of that information presented in a clean format, they've certainly made it easier. And now you need only take one of these individuals, maybe this woman, sit her down with one of these activists who uses this information to pull up names and addresses, and she can say, that's the person I saw in the courtroom. And there it is, confirmation. Listen, from the information published on these news outlets, I guarantee you, I could find out who these people are in minutes. Minutes. Maybe several minutes, maybe a few hours. A few of them I'd probably find immediately. A photo of a woman from the Minneapolis area riding a motorcycle of the appropriate age based on the sound of her voice, the things she said about herself and her beliefs. You can easily break these things down. It's only a matter of time before the hive mind on the internet does so, and that worries me because we've heard it. The nation doesn't want a trial. Chelsea Handler says there shouldn't be a trial. Someone already tried taking photos. I think we're looking at a potential mistrial in the long run. I don't know, though. I really don't. Look, I can't predict what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if George Floyd, I don't know if Derek Chauvin will be found, guilty of murdering George Floyd. I don't. What I know is very likely is that no matter what happens, I think there's going to be very serious violence and rioting, likely across this country. To me, it's absolutely crazy. When I think back to the past year, it's almost like several different timelines crashing through each other. We're in the midst of a pandemic. You can't go outside. You got to wear a mask. Well, at the same time, there's the biggest protests we've seen in decades or in this or the past several generations. How do we have tens of thousands of people marching in the street during a pandemic where no one can go outside? It just made no sense, did it? It's like two distinct, divergent realities existing at the same time. It's the cognitive dissonance of whatever it is these people believe. My opinion, I kind of feel like Chauvin will be acquitted. I really do. Even if he is found guilty of manslaughter, the other charges could absolutely be dropped. We have this story from USA Today, an opinion piece from Jonathan Turley. Turley, of course, as you know, is a constitutional scholar. I believe he's a constitutional scholar. They say, George Floyd death. If Derek Chauvin is acquitted, the 3 other cases could collapse. Yes, right. That's absolutely right. And if that happens, it won't matter if it's Chauvin. If any one of these police officers is acquitted, they will riot. And what will be done about it? In my opinion, nothing. I'm saying in my opinion a lot for a reason. I hope you understand why. If people go out and riot, as they have been over the past year, and still are in many places, the police won't do anything. The police may stop them. The police may make some arrests, fine. Prosecutors won't do anything about it. These people will be cut loose, and they'll continue until they get tired. That's the state of this country right now. So I'm hoping for a peaceful resolution. I just don't think we're going to get it. And as you can see, many on the left don't think we will either. But I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tonight at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL, where we will discuss many of these issues live, and you can comment during the show, and we will read many of your comments, as many as we can. So make sure you check that out at 8 p.m., and we will see you all then.